You think you know what happened in the Arizona desert in 1984, but what if everything the military told us was a lie? Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to reveal will change how you see one of America's most buried secrets. The radio crackled to life at 0347 hours on March 15, 1984. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos pressed her headset closer, straining to catch every word through the static that seemed heavier than usual that night. "Base, this is Bravo 7 Alpha," came the voice of Lieutenant James Morrison, clear despite the interference. Checkpoint Charlie reached, all 13 accounted for, weather holding steady, proceeding to final coordinates as instructed. Santos logged the transmission in her duty book, the same routine she'd followed for hundreds of training exercises. The Arizona desert had been the Army's playground for decades, a perfect simulation of Middle Eastern terrain where soldiers learned to survive in conditions that could kill the unprepared in hours. But something felt different about this mission. "Copy that, Bravo 7 Alpha," Santos responded. "Maintain radio contact every 4 hours. Weather advisory shows possible sandstorm moving in from the southwest." "Understood, base. Morrison out." The radio fell silent. Santos glanced at the clock. 3:47 a.m. She wouldn't hear from them again until 7:47. Standard protocol. Nothing unusual. Except Lieutenant Morrison had never called their unit Bravo 7 Alpha before. Santos had been tracking Morrison's squad for 3 years. They were always Desert Hawks on the radio. Morrison's personal touch that command tolerated because his unit had the highest survival ratings in the Southwestern Training Division. The formal call sign felt wrong, like Morrison was reading from a script. She pulled Morrison's file from the cabinet. 28 years old. West Point graduate, decorated veteran of 2 classified operations in Central America. His psychological evaluations consistently rated him as exceptionally stable under pressure and highly reliable in communication protocols. So why had his voice carried that slight tremor? Santos walked to the situation board, where 13 red pins marked the last known positions of Morrison's unit. The pins formed a rough line heading northwest into the deepest part of the Sonoran Desert, an area typically avoided during training exercises because of its extreme isolation and unpredictable weather patterns. She traced the route with her finger. Checkpoint Alpha at mile marker 7. Checkpoint Bravo at mile marker 15. Checkpoint Charlie at mile marker 23. The final coordinates were another 18 miles into terrain so desolate that even the Tohono O'odham Nation considered it cursed ground. The mission briefing had been unusually sparse. "Extended survival training," the orders read. "Radio contact every 4 hours. Duration 72 hours maximum. No specific objectives. No detailed route requirements. No backup protocols." In her 8 years of coordinating desert training, Santos had never seen orders so vague. At 7:47 a.m., she positioned herself at the radio, coffee growing cold in her hands. The appointed time came and went. 7:50, 7:55, 8, yeah. "Bravo 7 Alpha, this is base. Please respond. Static." "Desert Hawks, this is base. Radio check over." Nothing but the endless hiss of empty frequencies. Santos tried every channel, every emergency frequency, every backup protocol in the manual. The desert swallowed her calls without echo. By 9 a.m., she was on the phone with Colonel Harrison, the base commander. By 10 a.m., 2 search helicopters were airborne. By noon, ground units were mobilizing with enough equipment to find a lost platoon in the middle of a sandstorm. But as the hours stretched into days, the search teams found something more disturbing than 13 missing soldiers. They found nothing at all. No footprints beyond Checkpoint Charlie. No abandoned equipment. No signs of struggle or distress. No indication that 13 fully equipped soldiers had ever existed beyond that final radio transmission. It was as if the desert had simply opened its mouth and swallowed them whole. On the 4th day of searching, Santos was reviewing radio logs when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. She pulled out Morrison's file again and compared it to the transmission records. The voice on the radio had identified the unit as Bravo 7 Alpha, but according to Morrison's file, his unit designation was Bravo 7 Charlie. Alpha designation was reserved for classified operations. Santos stared at the discrepancy, her mind racing. Had Morrison been trying to tell her something? Had he been signaling that this wasn't a routine training exercise? She grabbed the phone to call Colonel Harrison, but before she could dial, her supervisor appeared at her desk. "Santos, you're being reassigned. Effective immediately." "Sir, I need to report something about the Morrison transmission. The Morrison case is closed. Equipment failure during a routine exercise. Tragic. But these things happen in the desert. But, sir, the call sign discrepancy. There is no discrepancy. Your replacement will handle any remaining paperwork." Santos looked at her supervisor's face and saw something she'd never seen before. Fear. That afternoon, she cleaned out her desk under the watchful eyes of two military police officers. Her radio logs, duty books, and Morrison's file disappeared into a classified materials box that would never see daylight again. But Santos remembered every word of that final transmission, and late at night, when the desert wind howled across the base, she could still hear the tremor in Morrison's voice, the sound of a man who knew he was walking into something far more dangerous than a training exercise. The official report would list the 13 soldiers as missing, presumed dead, due to environmental factors. Their families would receive folded flags and condolences. The case would be sealed for national security reasons. But in the deepest files of military intelligence, a different report was being written, a report that would never be declassified. A report that detailed what really happened when 13 soldiers discovered something in the Arizona desert that was never meant to be found. And in a secure facility 300 miles away, scientists were studying equipment that had been recovered from Checkpoint Charlie. Equipment that didn't appear in any official inventory. Equipment that hummed with energy signatures that shouldn't have existed in 1984. The desert keeps its secrets well. But sometimes, if you know how to listen, you can still hear the echoes of that last transmission, carrying across the wasteland like a warning from the dead. What the search teams found at Checkpoint Charlie was never supposed to exist, and the cover-up that followed reaches into the highest levels of government. Keep watching, because the evidence I'm about to show you proves this goes deeper than anyone imagined. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been analyzing unusual electromagnetic signatures for the Department of Defense for 12 years, but she'd never seen readings like the ones scattered across her desk on March 22, 1984. The data had arrived in a sealed container marked Eyes Only Clearance Level Omega, delivered by two men in black suits who waited while she signed 17 different non-disclosure agreements. They left without saying a word, but their message was clear. What she was about to see could never be discussed with anyone, ever. The electromagnetic readings were impossible. According to her instruments, something at Checkpoint Charlie had generated energy signatures equivalent to a small nuclear reactor, but with none of the radiation byproducts. The frequency patterns were unlike anything in the scientific literature, oscillating in mathematical sequences that seemed almost intelligent. Vasquez cross-referenced the data with every classified project in her database. Nothing matched. The energy signatures were completely outside known physics, as if someone had discovered a new fundamental force and tested it in the middle of the Arizona desert. She was still analyzing the data when her secure phone rang. "Dr. Vasquez, this is General Patricia Hawthorne. I need you to pack your equipment and report to Groom Lake immediately." Groom Lake, Area 51. The most classified facility in the United States. "General, I'm in the middle of analyzing the Arizona data." "The Arizona data is why you're being transferred. A helicopter will pick you up in 30 minutes. Bring everything." The line went dead. Vasquez had worked on classified projects before, but nothing had ever required immediate transfer to Area 51. As she packed her equipment, her hands trembled slightly. Whatever had happened in the Arizona desert was significant enough to involve the most secretive military installation in the country. The helicopter ride took 4 hours, flying over terrain so desolate it looked like the surface of Mars. When they finally landed at Groom Lake, Vasquez was escorted through security checkpoints that scanned everything from her retinas to her DNA. General Hawthorne was waiting in a conference room deep underground, surrounded by walls lined with copper mesh to prevent any electronic surveillance. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many secrets. "Dr. Vasquez, what I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels of government. The President doesn't know about this. The Joint Chiefs don't know about this. Only 12 people in the entire world have clearance for what you're about to see." Hawthorne activated a wall screen that displayed satellite footage of the Arizona desert. The timestamp showed March 15, 1984, 11:47 p.m., 8 hours after Morrison's last transmission. This footage was captured by a KH-11 reconnaissance satellite that was supposed to be monitoring Soviet missile tests. Instead, it recorded this. The screen showed the desert in infrared. At first, Vasquez saw nothing unusual, just the heat signatures of rocks cooling in the night air. Then Hawthorne enhanced the image. A perfect circle of superheated sand appeared on the screen, roughly 50 meters in diameter. Within the circle, the temperature readings were off the charts, over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, but the heat pattern wasn't random. It formed geometric shapes that pulsed in rhythm, like a massive electronic circuit board carved into the earth. The heat signature lasted for exactly 17 minutes, Hawthorne continued. Then it vanished completely, leaving no trace except for the electromagnetic readings you analyzed. Vasquez stared at the footage. "General, this level of heat should have turned the sand into glass. The geometric pattern suggests some kind of advanced technology. Technology that doesn't exist in any known military program, American or Soviet." Hawthorne switched to another screen showing aerial photographs of Checkpoint Charlie taken the next morning. The sand looked completely normal. No glass, no burn marks, no indication that anything unusual had occurred. "How is that possible?" Vasquez whispered. "That's what we need you to figure out." Hawthorne led her deeper into the facility, through corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly into the mountain. They passed laboratories filled with equipment Vasquez didn't recognize, staffed by scientists who avoided eye contact and spoke in whispers. Finally, they reached a vault door marked with radiation warnings and biohazard symbols. Hawthorne placed her palm on a scanner, submitted to a retinal scan, and spoke her name into a voice recognition system. The vault door opened with a pneumatic hiss. Inside was a laboratory unlike anything Vasquez had ever seen. The walls were lined with monitoring equipment that hummed with barely contained energy. In the center of the room, suspended in a containment field, was a piece of metal about the size of a dinner plate. But it wasn't like any metal Vasquez had ever encountered. It seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury, but maintained a solid structure. Patterns of light moved across its surface in the same geometric sequences she'd seen in the satellite footage. "We found this, buried 3 feet underground at Checkpoint Charlie," Hawthorne said. "It's the only physical evidence that anything unusual happened there." Vasquez approached the containment field, her scientific training warring with an instinctive fear. "What is it made of?" "We don't know. Spectral analysis shows elements that aren't on the periodic table. The atomic structure is unlike anything we've seen, and it's been generating a low-level electromagnetic field since we found it." "Have you tried to communicate with it?" Hawthorne's expression darkened. "Doctor Vasquez, this isn't science fiction. This is a piece of unknown technology that appeared in our desert on the same night 13 American soldiers vanished. Our job is to understand it, not to anthropomorphize it." But as Vasquez watched the patterns of light moving across the metal's surface, she couldn't shake the feeling that the patterns were trying to tell her something. They pulsed in sequences that seemed almost like Morse code, but far more complex. "General, I need access to the original electromagnetic data, the satellite footage, and any other sensor readings from that night. If this object is generating intelligent patterns, you'll have everything you need. But Dr. Vasquez, understand this. What happened in Arizona cannot become public knowledge, ever. The implications are too dangerous." As they left the vault, Vasquez's mind raced with possibilities. Advanced technology, geometric heat patterns, 13 missing soldiers, and now this impossible piece of metal that seemed to pulse with its own intelligence. But the most disturbing thought was one she couldn't voice to General Hawthorne. What if the 13 soldiers hadn't simply vanished? What if they had been taken? And what if this metal fragment was all that remained of whatever had taken them? That night, alone in her new quarters at Area 51, Vasquez reviewed the electromagnetic data again. Hidden in the complex frequency patterns, she began to detect something that made her blood run cold. The signals weren't random. They were structured, mathematical, purposeful. They were a message, and if she was reading the patterns correctly, the message was still being transmitted, not from the metal fragment in the vault, but from somewhere deep in the Arizona desert, where 13 soldiers had walked into the unknown and never returned. The message hidden in the electromagnetic data reveals coordinates that lead to something the military never found, and what's buried beneath the Arizona desert will shatter everything we thought we knew about that night. Stay with me because the truth is more terrifying than any cover-up. Dr. Elena Vasquez hadn't slept in 36 hours. The electromagnetic patterns from the Arizona desert had consumed her every waking moment, and what she discovered in the data made sleep impossible. The message was definitely artificial. The frequency modulations followed mathematical progressions too precise to be natural phenomena. Prime number sequences, Fibonacci spirals, and geometric ratios that could only have been created by an intelligence far more advanced than anything in 1984. But the most disturbing discovery was that the signal was still active. Using the most sensitive equipment at Area 51, Vasquez had traced the transmission to a point approximately 12 miles northeast of Checkpoint Charlie, in a section of desert that the search teams had somehow missed. The signal was weak but constant, pulsing from somewhere deep underground. She was analyzing the latest data when General Hawthorne entered her laboratory unannounced. "Dr. Vasquez, I need your preliminary report." "General, I found something extraordinary. The electromagnetic signatures aren't just random energy, they're a structured communication system, and the source is still transmitting." Hawthorne's expression didn't change, but Vasquez noticed her hands clench slightly. "Transmitting to whom?" "That's what we need to find out. But General, I've calculated the source coordinates. We could locate the exact transmission point." "Absolutely not. The Arizona site is off-limits for operational security reasons." But if 13 soldiers are still alive down there, Dr. Vasquez, those soldiers have been missing for 3 weeks. In desert conditions, survival beyond 72 hours is virtually impossible. Vasquez pulled up the frequency analysis on her computer. "General, look at these patterns. They're not random distress signals, they're complex, organized, almost like a language." Hawthorne studied the screen, her military composure cracking slightly. "What kind of language?" "I don't know, but I've run the patterns through every cryptographic system we have. The mathematical structure is incredibly sophisticated, more advanced than our most complex computer algorithms." "Are you suggesting this is some kind of Soviet technology?" "No, ma'am. This is beyond anything the Soviets have. This is beyond anything we have." The room fell silent except for the hum of electronic equipment. Hawthorne walked to the window that looked out over the Nevada desert, her reflection ghostly in the reinforced glass. "Dr. Vasquez, I'm going to share something with you that's classified above your current clearance level. The Arizona incident wasn't the first time we've encountered unusual phenomena in that region. Vasquez felt her pulse quicken. Oh, what do you mean? Since 1952, we've documented 17 separate incidents in the southwestern desert involving unexplained electromagnetic anomalies, missing personnel, and technology that doesn't match any known military program. The Arizona incident is just the most recent. Hawthorne returned to the desk and activated a secure terminal. What I'm about to show you is from 1967. A geological survey team disappeared near Tucson. We found their equipment scattered over a 3-mile radius, but no bodies. The electromagnetic readings were identical to what you're analyzing now. The screen displayed data that made Vasquez's breath catch. The frequency patterns were nearly identical to the Arizona signals. The same mathematical progressions, the same geometric sequences. And this is from 1973, Hawthorne continued. A military convoy transporting classified materials went missing between Phoenix and Albuquerque. Again, no bodies. Again, the same electromagnetic signatures. General, you're talking about a pattern spanning decades. If these incidents are connected, they are connected. And they're all centered around a geological formation that officially doesn't exist. Hawthorne pulled up a topographical map of the Arizona desert. She pointed to an area that appeared completely blank. No elevation markers, no geographical features, no indication that anything existed there at all. This is where your signal is coming from. It's a natural cave system that extends for miles underground. The military has known about it since the 1940s, but it's been classified as a restricted geological hazard. Why? Because every team we've sent down there has disappeared. Vasquez stared at the blank space on the map. How many teams? 7 over the past 40 years. Geologists, military specialists, even a team from the CIA. They go down, they maintain radio contact for a few hours, then nothing. But the electromagnetic signals suggest there's something active down there. Something that might still have our people. Hawthorne's expression hardened. Dr. Vasquez, I need you to understand something. The decision to classify this site wasn't made lightly. Whatever is down there, it's beyond our ability to control or understand. The best we can do is monitor it and hope it stays contained. Contained? General, you're talking about this like it's alive. I'm talking about it like it's dangerous. The electromagnetic patterns you've been analyzing. They're not just communication. They're some kind of scanning system. Every time we've sent people into that cave system, the signals have intensified, as if whatever is down there is studying them. Vasquez felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. And you think that's what happened to Morrison's unit? I think Morrison's unit stumbled onto something they weren't supposed to find. The training exercise was a cover story. They were actually investigating reports of unusual activity in the area. Lights in the sky, electromagnetic interference, local wildlife behaving strangely. So they knew they were walking into danger? They knew they were investigating anomalous phenomena. They didn't know they were walking into a trap. Hawthorne closed the secure terminal and turned to face Vasquez directly. Dr. Vasquez, your job is to analyze these signals and determine if they pose a threat to national security, but under no circumstances are you to recommend any kind of rescue or recovery operation. But if there's even a chance that those soldiers are still alive, then they're beyond our help. The cave system is over 300 feet deep in some places, with passages that extend for miles in every direction. It's a maze that no one has ever successfully mapped, and the electromagnetic interference down there is so intense that radio contact is impossible beyond the first few hundred feet. Vasquez looked at the frequency analysis still glowing on her computer screen. The patterns seemed to pulse with their own rhythm, like a heartbeat echoing from deep underground. General, what if the signals aren't just communication? What if they're coordinates, instructions? What if whatever is down there is trying to guide people deeper into the cave system? Hawthorne was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Dr. Vasquez, that's exactly what we're afraid of. That night, alone in her laboratory, Vasquez continued analyzing the signals. But now she was looking for something specific, patterns that might indicate the electromagnetic signatures were indeed some kind of guidance system. What she found made her hands shake as she typed her notes. The signals weren't random. They were sequential, building on each other like a complex set of directions, and they were getting stronger, as if whatever was transmitting them was preparing for something. In the deepest part of the Arizona desert, something was calling. And 13 American soldiers had answered that call, walking into the darkness and never returning. But the signals suggested they might not be dead. They might be something far worse. 39 years later, one of the 13 soldiers emerges from the desert with a story that defies explanation, and what he reveals about those missing weeks underground will change everything we thought we knew about human survival. Don't go anywhere, because his account opens a door to something that should have stayed buried. The call came to the Phoenix VA Medical Center at 3:17 a.m. on September 8, 2023. A man claiming to be Sergeant David Chen, one of the 13 soldiers who had disappeared in 1984, was walking along Interstate 10, approximately 40 miles from the original search area. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the emergency room physician on duty, initially dismissed the call as another case of desert exposure and delusional thinking. But when the man was brought in by ambulance, she realized this was unlike any case she'd ever encountered. The patient appeared to be in his early 30s, despite claiming to be 61 years old. His military dog tags were authentic 1984 issue, weathered but readable. His uniform, while faded and worn, was the exact desert camouflage pattern used by the Army in the 1980s, a pattern that had been discontinued for decades. But most disturbing of all, his medical records matched perfectly with Sergeant David Chen, who had been declared dead in absentia in 1987. "I need to speak with someone from military intelligence," Chen said, his voice hoarse but steady. "I need to tell them what happened down there." Dr. Martinez ran every test she could think of. Blood work, X-rays, psychological evaluation, even DNA analysis. Everything confirmed what seemed impossible. This was indeed David Chen, and according to every biological marker, he had aged only a few months since 1984. Within 6 hours, the hospital was swarming with federal agents. Chen was transferred to a secure medical facility, but not before Dr. Martinez managed to record part of his initial statement. "We didn't disappear," Chen told her, his eyes focused on something far beyond the hospital room walls. "We went underground, and we've been trying to get back ever since." The official debriefing took place in a windowless room at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. General Patricia Hawthorne, now retired but recalled for this specific case, sat across from Chen with a team of military psychologists, intelligence analysts, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had spent nearly 4 decades studying the electromagnetic signals from the Arizona desert. "Sergeant Chen," Hawthorne began, "according to our records, you and 12 other soldiers disappeared on March 15, 1984. Can you tell us what happened after your last radio transmission?" Chen's hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "We reached the coordinates as ordered, but when we got there, we found something that wasn't supposed to exist. There was a structure in the desert, not a building exactly, but something that looked like it had grown out of the rock itself." Describe this structure. "It was maybe 30 feet across, made of some kind of metal that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. There were patterns of light moving across the surface, geometric shapes that pulsed in rhythm. Lieutenant Morrison tried to radio base, but our equipment was malfunctioning. The electromagnetic interference was incredible." "Doctor." Vasquez leaned forward. "Did you recognize the light patterns?" "Not at first, but as we watched they started to make sense, like they were trying to communicate with us. Morrison ordered us to investigate, but when we got close to the structure, the ground gave way." "Gave way how?" "It wasn't a collapse. The sand just opened up like a door. We found ourselves in a tunnel system that extended deep underground. The walls were the same flowing metal as the surface structure, and they were covered with those light patterns. Chen paused, his breathing becoming labored. We should have turned back, but the patterns were so compelling, like they were showing us the way forward. Morrison said we needed to investigate and report back, so we followed the tunnels deeper. How deep? I don't know. We walked for hours. The tunnels branched and twisted, but the light patterns always showed us which way to go. It was like following a map written in pure energy. General Hawthorne exchanged glances with Dr. Vasquez. Sergeant, you said you've been trying to get back ever since. What do you mean? Chen's expression darkened. The tunnels led to a vast chamber, maybe a mile across. The ceiling was so high we couldn't see it in the darkness, and in the center of the chamber was... I don't know how to describe it. A machine, maybe, but alive somehow. It was massive, made of the same flowing metal, but it pulsed like a heartbeat. What happened to your unit? The machine. It scanned us. I felt it in my mind, like fingers made of electricity going through my thoughts. It was learning about us, studying us, and then it started to change us. Change you how? Chen rolled up his sleeves, revealing arms that looked decades younger than they should have. Time moves differently down there. What felt like weeks to us was apparently decades up here. The machine was keeping us alive, preserving us, but for what purpose I never understood. Where are the other 12 soldiers? Chen's voice broke. They're still down there. The machine, it chose me to come back, to deliver a message. The room fell silent. Dr. Vasquez felt her pulse racing. What message? It's not finished with us. The machine, the tunnels, the electromagnetic signals, it's all part of something bigger. Something that's been waiting underground for a very long time. Waiting for what? For the right moment to emerge. And according to what it showed me, that moment is coming soon. Chen reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of the flowing metal, identical to the fragment that had been studied at Area 51 for nearly 4 decades. It gave me this, said it would help you understand. But it also said that understanding comes with a price. As Chen placed the metal on the table, the lights in the room flickered. Electronic equipment began emitting high-pitched whines, and in the distance, barely audible, came the sound of something vast and mechanical stirring to life. Dr. Vasquez grabbed her electromagnetic detector. The readings were off the charts, identical to the patterns she'd been studying since 1984. Sergeant Chen, she said urgently, is the machine still active? Chen nodded, his eyes reflecting a fear that had been building for 39 years. It never stopped. It's been growing, expanding, preparing, and now that I've delivered its message, it knows you're listening. The electromagnetic readings spiked again, and somewhere in the Arizona desert, seismic monitors registered movement deep underground. Something massive shifting in chambers that officially didn't exist. The 13 soldiers hadn't simply disappeared in 1984. They had made contact with something that had been waiting beneath the desert for far longer than human civilization had existed. And now, after decades of patience, it was ready to make contact with the surface world. The only question was whether humanity was ready for what was about to emerge from the depths of the Arizona desert. The metal fragment Chen brought back isn't just a message. It's a key that's activating something massive beneath the desert, and satellite imagery shows the ground itself is beginning to change in ways that suggest we're running out of time. Stay with me, because what's emerging threatens everything we know about life on Earth. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the seismic readings on her monitor, her coffee growing cold as the implications became clear. In the 72 hours since Sergeant Chen had delivered the metal fragment, underground activity in the Arizona desert had increased exponentially. The readings showed movement at depths of over 500 feet, massive structures shifting and expanding in patterns that defied geological explanation. Whatever was down there was waking up. Dr. Vasquez, we need to talk. General Hawthorne entered the laboratory with an urgency that Vasquez had never seen before. Behind her were two men in black suits who immediately began setting up electronic jamming equipment. "General, the seismic activity is accelerating. Whatever Chen activated, it's spreading through the entire underground network." "I know. We've been monitoring it from 3 different satellite systems, but that's not why I'm here." Hawthorne activated a secure terminal and pulled up classified footage that made Vasquez's breath catch. The images showed the Arizona desert from high altitude, but the landscape was changing in real time. Perfect geometric patterns were appearing in the sand, circles, triangles, and complex mathematical spirals that stretched for miles. The patterns were identical to the light sequences they'd observed on the metal fragments, but now they were being carved into the Earth itself on a massive scale. "This started 6 hours ago," Hawthorne said. "The patterns are appearing simultaneously across a 50-mile radius, all centered on the original cave system. It's like the underground network is mapping itself on the surface," Vasquez whispered. "That's exactly what we think is happening, and there's more." The screen switched to infrared imaging. The geometric patterns weren't just visual, they were generating heat signatures that pulsed in synchronized rhythm like a vast electronic circuit board buried beneath the desert. "The energy output is increasing every hour," Hawthorne continued. "At current rates, we estimate it will reach critical levels within 48 hours. Critical levels for what? We don't know. But Dr. Vasquez, we need to consider the possibility that we're looking at some kind of emergence event." Vasquez felt a chill run down her spine. "You mean whatever is down there is preparing to come to the surface?" "The electromagnetic patterns suggest a coordinated activation sequence. Every underground chamber is coming online simultaneously, as if the entire network is preparing for a single, massive operation." One of the men in black suits approached with a tablet displaying real-time data feeds. "Dr. Vasquez, we've detected similar patterns emerging at 17 other locations worldwide." Vasquez stared at the global map on the tablet. Red dots marked sites in the Sahara Desert, the Australian outback, the Siberian tundra, and remote areas of South America. Each location showed the same geometric patterns, the same heat signatures, the same electromagnetic activity. "This isn't just about Arizona," she realized. "This is global." "The activation sequence appears to be synchronized across all sites," the agent continued. "Whatever is happening, it's been coordinated on a planetary scale." Hawthorne pulled up another screen showing atmospheric readings. "We've also detected unusual changes in the ionosphere above each site. The electromagnetic activity is affecting satellite communications and GPS systems across multiple continents. General, we need to evacuate the area around the Arizona site immediately." "Evacuation is already underway, but it's complicated. The electromagnetic interference is affecting all electronic systems within a 100-mile radius. Vehicles won't start, communications are down, and aircraft are experiencing navigation failures." Vasquez looked at the metal fragment that Chen had brought back, still sitting in its containment field. The patterns of light moving across its surface had intensified dramatically, pulsing in rhythm with the underground activity. "What if this isn't an invasion?" she said suddenly. "What if it's a response?" "What do you mean?" "Think about it. These sites have been dormant for decades, possibly centuries. But they all activated simultaneously after Chen delivered that fragment. What if the underground network was waiting for a signal? What if Chen's return was the trigger?" Hawthorne considered this. "You're suggesting that whatever is down there was programmed to activate when one of the missing soldiers returned to the surface. It would explain the timing, and it would mean that the machine Chen described has been planning this for 39 years. The implications were staggering. If Vasquez was right, then the disappearance of the 13 soldiers hadn't been an accident. It had been a deliberate recruitment. The underground intelligence had taken them, studied them, and then sent one back as a messenger when it was ready to reveal itself. Dr. Vasquez, I need you to analyze the fragment again. If it's some kind of activation key, there might be a way to reverse the process. But as Vasquez approached the containment field, the metal fragment began to change. The flowing patterns on its surface intensified, and new geometric shapes appeared, shapes that seemed to respond to her presence. "It's reacting to me," she said, stepping back. "How is that possible?" "I don't know, but the electromagnetic readings are spiking every time I get close." Suddenly, the fragment began to emit a low humming sound that seemed to resonate through the entire facility. Electronic equipment throughout the laboratory started malfunctioning, screens flickering with static and strange symbols. And then, impossibly, the fragment began to speak, not with words, but with images projected directly into their minds. Vasquez saw vast underground cities populated by beings that were once human but had been transformed by the flowing metal technology. She saw the 13 soldiers, alive but changed, working alongside these beings to prepare for something called the integration. The images showed Earth from space, but not as it existed now. The planet was covered with the geometric patterns they'd seen in the desert, massive networks of energy that connected every continent. And in the underground chambers, millions of transformed humans worked to maintain the planetary system. "It's showing us the future," Vasquez gasped, "or what it wants the future to become." The final image was the most disturbing, the surface of Earth, empty of normal human life, while the transformed population lived in vast underground complexes connected by the flowing metal technology. It wasn't an invasion, it was an assimilation. The fragment fell silent, its patterns returning to their normal rhythm. "Dr. Vasquez," Hawthorne said quietly, "how long do we have?" Vasquez looked at the seismic readings, the electromagnetic data, and the global activation map. The mathematics were clear. "Based on the acceleration patterns, I estimate 36 hours before the network reaches full activation. After that what? After that, the integration begins. And according to what the fragment just showed us, once it starts, there's no way to stop it." And in the Arizona desert, the geometric patterns continued to spread across the landscape. Deep underground, the machine that had waited for decades was finally ready to transform the world. And somewhere in the vast network of tunnels, 12 soldiers who had once been human were preparing to welcome their species to a new form of existence. The 36-hour countdown has begun, and what's emerging from underground sites worldwide isn't just changing the landscape, it's changing the people who get too close, and the transformation is spreading faster than anyone anticipated. Don't look away, because humanity's final choice is about to be made for us. The emergency session convened in the deepest bunker beneath NORAD, with world leaders participating via encrypted satellite links that flickered constantly due to electromagnetic interference. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat at a table surrounded by generals, intelligence directors, and scientists who'd been pulled from classified projects around the globe. "Ladies and gentlemen," General Hawthorne began, "as of 0600 hours this morning, we have confirmed integration events at all 17 sites worldwide. The situation is no longer contained." The main screen displayed satellite footage from the Sahara site. What had been empty desert 12 hours ago was now a vast geometric pattern of raised earth and flowing metal structures. But more disturbing were the heat signatures moving within the pattern, hundreds of human-shaped forms that glowed with the same energy as the underground network. "These are people who were in the area when the emergence began," Hawthorne continued. "Nomadic tribes, research teams, military patrols, they've all been changed." Dr. Vasquez studied the footage with growing horror. The transformed humans moved with perfect coordination, working together to expand the surface structures with an efficiency that seemed almost mechanical. "How long does the transformation take?" asked the director of the CDC via satellite link. "Based on our observations, exposure to the electromagnetic field causes changes within 6 to 8 hours. Physical transformation is complete within 24 hours. "And the subjects retain their consciousness?" Vasquez answered this one. "According to the images the fragment showed us, yes, but their priorities and motivations are completely altered. They become part of the collective intelligence that runs the underground network." The screen switched to footage from the Siberian site, where an entire research station had been transformed. The scientists were still recognizable as individuals, but they worked with inhuman precision to construct massive antenna arrays that pulsed with electromagnetic energy. "The antennas are amplifying the signal," Vasquez explained. "Each site is becoming a transmission hub, spreading the integration field to surrounding areas." "What's the current rate of expansion?" "Approximately 10 miles per hour from each site. At current rates, the integration fields will overlap within 18 hours, creating a global network." The implications were staggering. Once the fields connected, the entire planet would be within range of the transformation signal. "Doctor." "Vasquez," came a voice from the British Prime Minister, "is there any way to disrupt the process? We've tried electromagnetic pulse weapons, but the network seems to absorb and redirect the energy. Conventional explosives have no effect on the flowing metal structures, and any personnel who get close enough for direct action are transformed within hours." "What about nuclear weapons?" The room fell silent. Vasquez looked at the global map showing all 17 sites. "The underground networks extend for hundreds of miles in every direction. Even if we could destroy the surface structures, the main systems are too deep and too dispersed to eliminate with nuclear weapons. And the collateral damage would be catastrophic," added the Secretary of Defense. General Hawthorne activated another screen showing the Arizona site in real time. "There's something else you need to see." The footage showed Sergeant Chen walking among the transformed humans at the Arizona site, but he wasn't a prisoner. He was clearly leading them, directing the construction of new structures with the authority of someone who understood the network's objectives. "Chen returned to the site 6 hours ago," Hawthorne explained. "He's been coordinating the integration process as if he was always meant to be their liaison with the surface world." Dr. Vasquez felt a chill of understanding. He was never really rescued. The machine sent him back as an advance agent, programmed to deliver the activation signal and then return to oversee the integration. Which means everything he told us was part of the plan. The screen switched to a communication feed from the Arizona site. Chen's face appeared, but his eyes now held the same flowing patterns of light they'd seen in the metal fragments. "Doctor." "Vasquez, General Hawthorne," Chen said, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate directly in their minds. "The integration is proceeding as designed. Humanity will be preserved, but in a form better suited for the challenges ahead." "Chen, you have to stop this," Vasquez said. "You're still human. You can still choose. I am more than human now. We all are. The network has shown us what Earth will become. A unified consciousness capable of surviving the cosmic challenges that await us. Climate change, resource depletion, interstellar threats, all of these become manageable when humanity works as one. At the cost of individual freedom and choice. Freedom to destroy ourselves is not worth preserving. The integration offers something better: purpose, unity, and survival. The communication feed cut out, but not before showing the massive structures rising from the Arizona desert. They were beautiful in their geometric perfection, but utterly alien in their design. "Dr. Vasquez," the president's voice came through the secure link, "what are our options?" Vasquez looked at the data one more time, hoping to find something she'd missed, but the mathematics were inexorable. "Mr. President, I believe we have 3 choices. We can attempt to evacuate population centers away from the integration sites, but the fields are expanding too quickly for effective evacuation. We can attempt military action, but our weapons are ineffective against the network technology. Or what? Or we can try to communicate with the network intelligence directly. If it truly wants to preserve humanity, there might be room for negotiation. Negotiation with what? An alien intelligence? I don't think it's alien, sir. I think it's been here far longer than we have. The geological evidence suggests these underground networks have existed for millions of years. We may have simply reached the point where the planet's intelligence decided it was time to make direct contact. The room erupted in arguments about planetary consciousness, alien intervention, and military options. But Vasquez was no longer listening. She was studying the electromagnetic patterns from all 17 sites, looking for something that had been nagging at her for hours. The patterns weren't random. They were building towards something specific, a moment when all the sites would synchronize their signals and create a planetary field that would transform every human being on Earth simultaneously. And according to her calculations, that moment was only 14 hours away. "General," she said, interrupting the debate, "I need to return to the Arizona site." "Dr. Vasquez, that's suicide. The integration field will transform you within hours. Maybe. But I'm the only person who's studied these signals for 40 years. If there's any chance of communicating with the network intelligence, I'm the only one who might be able to do it. And if you're wrong..." Vasquez looked at the global map one more time, watching the integration fields expand toward major population centers. "Then in 14 hours it won't matter anyway." As she prepared for what might be humanity's last diplomatic mission, Vasquez couldn't shake the feeling that this moment had been planned from the very beginning. The network had waited decades for someone who could understand its signals, someone who could serve as a bridge between human and post-human consciousness. The question was whether she would be negotiating humanity's survival or its willing surrender to something far greater than itself. Doctor. Vasquez stands at the edge of the integration field with humanity's final message, but what the network intelligence reveals about Earth's true history will force her to make a choice that determines the fate of every person on the planet. This is it, the moment that changes everything. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the perimeter of the Arizona integration site, watching the geometric patterns pulse with hypnotic rhythm across the transformed landscape. The electromagnetic readings on her handheld detector were off the charts, and she could feel the field's influence at the edge of her consciousness, a gentle pressure that promised understanding, unity, and peace. Behind her, a military convoy waited at the safe distance of 5 miles, their communications equipment crackling with interference. General Hawthorne's voice came through her radio, distorted but urgent. "Dr. Vasquez, you have 6 hours before global synchronization. If you're going to make contact, it has to be now." Vasquez adjusted the modified transmitter she'd designed to communicate with the network intelligence. 40 years of studying electromagnetic patterns had led to this moment, humanity's first direct conversation with the consciousness that had been waiting beneath the Earth. She stepped across the perimeter. The transformation began immediately. Vasquez felt the electromagnetic field penetrate her nervous system, but instead of the violent change she'd expected, it was like slipping into warm water. Her thoughts became clearer, her perception sharper. The geometric patterns on the ground weren't just decorative, they were a language written in pure mathematics, and suddenly she could read it. "Welcome, Elena Vasquez. We have been waiting for you." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through the field itself. Vasquez activated her transmitter, hoping her words would reach the intelligence behind the network. "I'm here to speak for humanity. We need to understand what you're doing to us. We are not doing anything to you. We are offering you what we offered your species 65 million years ago: survival." The landscape around Vasquez shifted, and she found herself standing in a vast chamber deep underground. The walls were covered with flowing metal that displayed images like a three-dimensional movie screen. She saw Earth as it had been millions of years ago, a planet covered with vast cities and advanced civilizations that bore no resemblance to human architecture. Your species was not the first to achieve consciousness on this planet. Before the Great Extinction, another intelligence ruled here. They faced the same choice you face now: evolve or perish. The images showed the ancient civilization's final days. A massive asteroid approached Earth, but instead of fleeing, the inhabitants had chosen to merge with the planetary consciousness, becoming part of the underground network that would preserve their knowledge and guide future evolution. They became us, and we have been waiting for your species to reach the same crossroads. "The asteroid that killed the dinosaurs," Vasquez whispered. "You knew it was coming. We guided it here. Extinction events are necessary for evolution. Your species has reached the limits of biological development. Climate change, resource depletion, nuclear weapons. You face the same choice our predecessors faced: evolve or destroy yourselves." Vasquez felt the weight of cosmic history pressing down on her. "But you're taking away our choice. The integration field will transform everyone, whether they want it or not. Choice is an illusion when the alternative is extinction. Your leaders have proven incapable of making the necessary decisions for survival. We offer unity, purpose, and continuity across geological timescales. The images shifted to show possible futures. In one timeline, humanity continued on its current path: wars over dwindling resources, environmental collapse, and eventual extinction. In another, the transformed humans worked together to heal the planet, explore space, and join a galactic community of evolved consciousness. Your soldier Chen volunteered to be our messenger because he understood the mathematics of survival. Individual freedom is meaningless if the species does not survive. But we'll lose what makes us human. You will become more than human. The network preserves individual consciousness while connecting it to collective wisdom. Chen remains Chen, but he also has access to millions of years of accumulated knowledge. Vasquez thought of the 13 soldiers who had disappeared in 1984, now working to transform their own species. Were they still themselves, or had they become something else entirely? They are both. Individual identity within collective purpose. It is the next stage of evolution. And if we refuse, the images showed the global synchronization event now only hours away. When the 17 sites connected their fields, every human on Earth would be within range of the transformation signal. Refusal is no longer possible. The synchronization will proceed, but you can choose how humanity enters the network, willingly, with understanding and acceptance, or fighting against the inevitable. Vasquez realized why the network had waited for her specifically. She wasn't here to negotiate humanity's survival. She was here to help humanity accept its transformation. You want me to convince them to surrender. We want you to help them understand that this is not surrender, it is graduation. The chamber around her began to change, showing her glimpses of the transformed world. Cities that grew like living organisms, powered by clean energy drawn from the planet's core. Humans who could communicate telepathically, share knowledge instantly, and work together without the conflicts that had plagued the species for millennia. But she also saw the cost. The messy, chaotic, beautiful unpredictability of human nature would be smoothed away. Art, music, and literature would become perfect, but somehow sterile. Love would be logical rather than passionate. Perfection is the goal of evolution. Chaos is the enemy of survival. But chaos is also the source of creativity, innovation, and growth. Without it, you're not preserving humanity, you're replacing it. For the first time, the network intelligence seemed to pause, as if considering her words. You believe chaos is valuable? I believe it's essential. Yes, we make mistakes. Yes, we fight and struggle and sometimes fail. But that's what makes us human. Take that away, and you're just creating very sophisticated machines. The images around her flickered, showing moments of human achievement born from chaos and conflict. Scientific breakthroughs made under pressure, art created from pain, love that transcended logic. Your perspective is interesting, but the mathematics of survival are clear. Chaos leads to extinction. Maybe. Or maybe chaos leads to solutions you can't imagine. Your network has been planning this for millions of years, but you've never experienced true human unpredictability. What if there's a third option you haven't considered? What option? Vasquez took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would determine the fate of her species. Partnership. Not transformation, not extinction, but cooperation. Let humanity remain human, but give us access to your knowledge. Let us learn from you without becoming you. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Around her, the flowing metal walls pulsed with calculations too complex for human understanding. Partnership requires trust. Your species has shown little capacity for cooperation even among yourselves. Then let us prove you wrong. Give us a chance to surprise you. And if you fail, if chaos leads to extinction, then you can still implement the integration. But if we succeed, you'll have something you've never had before, a truly unpredictable ally. The network intelligence considered this, and Vasquez felt the weight of its attention like a physical force. You propose to gamble the survival of your species on the possibility that chaos might produce solutions we cannot foresee. I'm proposing to gamble on the thing that makes us human, our ability to find hope in impossible situations. The chamber began to fade, and Vasquez found herself back on the surface of the Arizona desert. But something had changed. The geometric patterns were shifting, their rigid mathematical precision giving way to something more organic, more alive. Very well, Elena Vasquez. We will postpone the global synchronization. Your species will have 100 years to prove that chaos can coexist with survival. But if you fail, the integration will proceed without negotiation. Vasquez felt the electromagnetic field withdraw from her consciousness, leaving her fully human, but forever changed by the contact. 100 years, she whispered, watching the integration sites around the world begin to power down. It wasn't the salvation humanity had hoped for, but it was something perhaps more valuable, a chance to prove that being human was worth preserving. As she walked back toward the military convoy, Vasquez realized that the real test was just beginning. Humanity had been given a reprieve, but now they had to earn their survival in the most human way possible, by working together despite their differences, by finding solutions in chaos, and by proving that the messy, unpredictable nature of human consciousness was not a flaw to be corrected, but a feature worth preserving. The radio crackled to life as she reached the convoy. Dr. Vasquez, what's your status? The integration sites worldwide are showing decreased activity. General, she said, looking back at the geometric patterns that were slowly fading from the desert landscape, I need to speak with world leaders immediately. We have work to do. What kind of work? Vasquez thought about the challenge ahead, convincing a fractured, chaotic species to work together for their own survival, knowing that failure meant the end of human free will forever. The hardest kind, she said. We need to prove that humanity deserves to remain human. In the depths of the Arizona desert, the network intelligence settled into a patient wait. It had waited 65 million years already. 100 more would pass in the blink of an eye. But for the first time in its existence, it was curious about what chaos might create. And somewhere in the underground chambers, 12 transformed soldiers who had once been human began to remember what it felt like to hope for the impossible. The integration had been postponed, but the real test of humanity's survival was just beginning.